turnout. Anyway, the approval of the agenda.
Mayor, before we approve the agenda, I'd like to add to the closed session a discussion for property acquisition.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Harrison?
I echo that.
All in favor? Motion passes. Manager Moore, would you lead us off?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. As we continue to provide you the quarterly reports, this quarter's quarterly reports are focused on the requested budgets for the FY24 budgets for each of the departments. So while you might have some operational details and some reports on the quarter, this is really a focus on the budget requests. As a reminder, you're going to see a lot of budget requests, which will not be recommended to you in May. However, when you do receive the recommended budget, at least by hearing these reports, you'll know what has been left in and what has been left out. Once the budget's delivered to you, then you'll have the opportunity, if you want to swap things out, to make the decision at that time. So your first quarterly report for tonight is from Parks and Recreation, and I'll recognize Sheila Long, your Parks and Recreation Director.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. Thank you for this opportunity to talk with you about Parks and Recreation in this quarter. I first wanted to start with just a reminder that the Parks and Rec Department really, in our efforts, anything from our park side to our administrative side, but also our recreation side, we start with the town's strategic plan. And our master plan took that to heart and took that into consideration. And so they're all tied together. And I wanted to demonstrate how in your master plan, you've seen this before, but our master plan had a series of goals, and all of those goals tie back directly to your strategic plan and the focus areas of small town life, vibrant downtown, and growing smart. You saw this slide previously in our last quarterly update, and I wanted to bring it back because it continues to be an important part of what we do and how we're currently operating as a department. And our biggest focus in our efforts to serve our community is to really maximize our resources and maximize our impact by implementing our master plan and expanding the people that we serve. Themes that you'll continue to hear, you heard this last time, but you'll also hear it tonight, is that we have to adapt, we have to consider reallocations, we have to partner. We cannot do what we need to do in this community and serve our citizens if we try to do it alone. We have to have partnerships. And so we continue to think, why do we do the things that we do? Is it what's best in the big picture? So those are things that we continue to consider as we move forward. We also will talk about this some in the presentation. When we hear things in the community about something being a certain way or they don't understand, we really try to take a step back and consider, well, you know, where is that comment coming from? And is there something that we could do to improve our service or to better communicate what we're doing? So that's a part of adapting. So at our last quarterly, we talked about evaluating Rec Desk, and we have rolled out in recent weeks a series of overhauls of how we use our recreation software. So we spent a good amount of time with staff in Wake Forest who have used this program for over 9 years, and they've had a lot of great lessons learned and things that they shared with us. So we started our evaluation with just looking at how we're using it and what frustrations we were having, but we also talked to people that were using the software to register for programs to kind of hear what some of their concerns were. And we also just looked at other recreation websites and how, like, even tried going in and register for programs, and same for ours, to see what the differences were, what would work better for us and be more customer friendly. And so the first big change that we made was completely recategorizing programs on the website. So we actually made less categories, so it was easier to navigate, and you weren't trying to figure out, am I going to youth, or am I going to teen, or am I going to art, or am I going to summer camp? And we tried to make it really clear, but we also wanted to follow what our program guide is. And so the categories have changed to match that. We also are playing with, we're still trying to figure out what's going to work best, having numbered programs versus keeping dates and programs, because often what you have in recreation departments like ours, or you run 6-week series, and so in the spring you might have 2, and in the fall you might have 2, and so figuring out a way to better communicate. If you're looking at the program guide or you're seeing a social media post, you know that this is the one that I was interested in, and you don't have to navigate as much. And so that's something we're working with, trying to figure out which one's going to work best for us. Another thing that we did was remove additional forms. So if you had registered for a program, especially after COVID, you know, there was a COVID waiver, there was a general waiver, there was the program registration form, and we were able to consolidate all of the waivers into one document that just, as you register, you just hit accept. You don't have to go and click into each different one and agree to it. So it's all in one place. We also added our refund policy, and I believe we added the athletics code of conduct as well. And so that way everything's there in one place. You don't have to go hunt for it when you register. The other thing we did is we were able to activate on the section of registration where you select the program and you have to insert your fee, and you select the person that you're registering for the program. We were able to add different questions that are specific to the program that you click. And so you don't have to go and click into this program registration form, because there's still some questions that we need answered if you've ever played sports before and you're registering for this, or if you're bringing your kid to summer camp and we're going to be responsible for them without a parent. There's certain things that we need to know: who's allowed to pick them up, what allergies do they have. And so we were able to activate those types of questions in that form, so it's automatic in the web page, but you don't have to go click into something else. It will still prompt you for this program registration form, but it should autofill, and you don't have to click into it. You just acknowledge that it's accurate. And that's something that we don't need to change, because we do need to at least make sure we know who your emergency contacts are at some point. So once you've filled it out one time, you don't have to keep filling it out. You just have to acknowledge that the information is accurate. The next thing that we are working towards is preparing for membership cards. So this will improve our ability to track participation at the community center. So that's something, you know, we did it by paper for so long that now that we've had the software, you know, when you come in to walk or you come in to participate into a program, our staff will input what program you're coming into. But our software has the ability to have membership cards. And so when a kid comes into a program that they're registered for, they can scan their card, it'll show up what it is, and we can click on it, or we could even have a self check-in thing. There are things that we can use technology moving forward, but it'll really improve the efficiency of what we're doing when it comes to our program tracking and participation tracking. And we're really looking forward to seeing how that rolls out. I think this will be very important as we seek to transition the facility at the community center to function more as a community center where people can come and go, similar to what it's pretty standard for community centers. We've just never been funded to operate that way. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later tonight. But this will definitely help us move in that direction. So we're getting ready for it. We're exploring it, learning. That way when we roll it out, it is seamless. Before I get off of this, so in addition to updates to Rec Desk, we are currently evaluating the pages of, that are related to Parks and Rec on the town's website. And so in the same capacity, we're going in, we're looking at it from how we're using it and what's working and what's not working, but we also want to talk with people from the outside that are getting information and get some feedback there. And we're going to visit other websites to see, you know, how useful they are, what they have that's working well, and how we can, things that we can change to make it more user-friendly. So that's kind of our next big project, and we're looking forward to that. Something that we also did on Rec Desk, but we've also done it with some of our other forums, is start to have translations. So we activated on Rec Desk a site translator, so there are now 132 languages that are accessible. So if you are registering and you select a language, everything on the website will be translated to that language, including the forms and the liability waivers, and it will all be translated for you. We also have had our facility use forms translated to Spanish. We've had our registration forms translated to Spanish so that if you come in and do things in person and you don't want to use the website, we can still have that information communicated to those that are Spanish speaking. Our financial aid program is continuing to be a great asset for us. So if you'll recall, this is a newer program opportunity. The Parks and Rec Advisory Board raised, I believe it was about $1,500 for us to start a financial aid scholarship fund. And so from October through December, we distributed $135. And the current, or as of December 30th, the available funding was at $994. As of January 2020, or from January 2022 to earlier this week, your recreation impact fee has collected just under $3.4 million. And so that is great for a community that has valued recreation and parks for many, many years. So your community has had a high level of service. It dates back for, 50 to 70 years at least. I mean, much further than that, when it was a volunteer-led commission that was leading the effort to develop parks in your community. And so I think this is a huge accomplishment for our community, in that we got in very quickly is definitely an important piece immediately following your Parks and Rec master plan. So reminders is that it's to be used for one-time CIP projects. It can only be used on new amenities. It can't be used on renovation. You can use it to acquire land. We should consider using it to acquire land to serve our growth, because it's being paid by those that are impacting our park system. And so the master plan recognizes that additional park land would be needed. So those are things that we'll have to look at and consider as we look to expend the recreation impact fees that you've collected. Before I move on, were there any questions about anything I've talked about so far? So as an update to our capital projects in the Parks and Rec Department, the community park basketball courts were completed. They were the last time we met. The Little River Park site-specific plan has been completed. You adopted that in November, and we're moving forward on grant development, and we're also working to get design bids out. What you may have noticed if you've been to Little River Park in the last couple of weeks is that the kudzu that we've been treating for the last year is substantially gone. And it really, if you've not gone back there, I highly encourage that you do, because if you are as excited as I am about the Little River Park plan, that kudzu being gone and you having kind of that open view, you can really dream about what that plan is going to be and start to see it come together. So if you've not had a chance to walk back there, I highly encourage it. The tennis court resurfacing has been completed. The Gill Street shade structures were installed. Our picnic tables finally came in, so the little things that you don't expect to hold you up in a project are the ones that end up back ordered. So we are so excited. I really think that it really is a great added asset to the park. We are planning. We're going to have to remove the fence that was installed around the playground, just because it's becoming a safety hazard from I'm trying to think. The best way to explain it, the kids, when they are running back and forth from the basketball court and the playground, it's a lot more fun to jump over the fence than to go through the gate. And so it's really just starting to it's not just a maintenance issue, it's starting to cause a safety hazard. And so we're gonna remove that, and I think that it'll really just open that area up a lot and really enhance it. Let's see, the town hall soccer field, you've seen that in play. We're raring up for a wonderful soccer spring season, so you'll see it get plenty of play here in just a few short weeks. And I believe we've got all of the new trash cans and benches that were ordered installed, and they're looking nice. It really does make a difference. I mean, we're very fortunate to have the the town-made benches and trash cans for so long, but they were really starting to wear out and decay. And so being able to transition has been really nice to see it come together. Capital projects that are in progress. Again, you know about Little River Park. We're working towards phase 1 construction, pending funding. First step is going to be drawings and grant development. Our park signs, we will move forward with that. We're not going to move forward with that until we have our branding squared away. We have received bids on the ADA transition plan for the town. It did come in over budget, so we really need to take a look at evaluating that project scope and how we're going to move forward. There's also the alley activation project with HUD, and so we've had some discussion in recent weeks. I think it's also important to note that my involvement in that project really spurred from me being on the Economic Development Committee, and while it does have some parks and recreation components in it, the original intent really was to have more of an economic development impact as well. And so we are going to be working closely with the economic development team to transition that project to something that they'll oversee. Any questions about capital projects? I do want to talk about pickleball and tennis. So pickleball is a national trend. It is fast growing. We have 2 indoor pickleball courts at the center currently. There is limited availability. We also have 2 tennis courts. They are more than 50 years old. We are offering scheduled pickleball play opportunities Monday afternoons and evenings at the community center, as well as Tuesday evenings at Willie Park. And I will tell you, it's not enough pickleball. It's not enough pickleball opportunities. At the same time, tennis players don't like, losing access to the tennis court for pickleball either. And so it's a balancing act. And our master plan recognized the need to add pickleball courts to our park system. And we highly recommend, in addition to the installing pickleball courts, is that we look at rebuilding the tennis courts based on the age. And so that's something that, as we have taken on the property where the former pool was at Whitley Park, we're going to need to take a look at that property and to determine what the best use is moving forward, and have a conversation around a master plan for that park, and if rebuilding tennis courts and installing pickleball courts at a location makes sense. I will say I get a little bit concerned about putting pickleball there, just because there's an increase in trend, because it is so popular, that when these pickleball courts are placed in a neighborhood like that, there's a lot of sound noise that comes from this. And so communities are having to now go back and limit the hours of which pickleball is played. And that's going to be really hard for us to manage with our size. And so there's some discussion that needs to be had over if Whitley Park would be the appropriate place for that. If it is, what would we do to address sound? But also, is there another location that we see these opportunities being? So those are some discussions that we need to have. Any questions about pickleball or tennis? So we'll move on to athletics, and we have been really blessed with registration in the last 2 years. So you'll see I skipped 2020 and 2021 in our youth athletic numbers for obvious reasons with COVID. So the best comparison I can give you is 2019 as the last we had a full year prior to last year. And so you see over the I've broken it down by seasons in the graph on your left. We start with our spring sports. You'll see where baseball starts to take a little bit of a decline. Softball kind of wavers a little bit. Yeah. And then spring soccer just continues to just grow substantially. 2019 was the first year that you offered spring soccer, and I think that's where you start to see that little bit of a decline, where even though our population is growing, people didn't have the option locally to play in recreational soccer, and so you see that impact on the baseball program by offering soccer. The other side of that is the community's telling you they want to play soccer. Basketball, you're seeing, you saw that decline last year. We strongly believe that is a rollover of COVID concerns, but then you see it go right back up and continue to grow this last season. Fall baseball steadily increased, which we actually thought that was really interesting based on spring numbers, because typically, I mean, you can see in the chart, fall baseball is participated in at a lower level, and that's not just here, that's everywhere in the industry. Excuse me. And so we found it interesting that where we saw declines in the spring, we didn't see that decline in the fall, that it continues to grow. And again, fall softball is kind of doing that bit of a wave, and fall soccer is growing very similarly to spring soccer. So we are hovering around 950 total athletic participants over the year. So what we're seeing with our youth sport trends is rapid growth in soccer and basketball. That is causing limited facility availability. We also have light restrictions, because we don't have any lights on our soccer fields. And so there are impacts on our programs, there are impacts on our rentals, there is an increase on field wear, and we're gonna have to enhance our turf management. When it comes to baseball and softball, we're seeing some consistency. We're also recognizing opportunity to adapt our fields to increase some versatility. So some of the discussions we're having are where we have some permanent bases and mounds, we might need to transition to temporary that can be moved, and so that it gives us some flexibility. So maybe we can concentrate certain sports in certain areas and give us some opportunity to play even other sports potentially at some of these locations. So those are things we're looking at, and you'll see in the budget. So we are seeking to reinstate the full-time athletic coordinator. We're looking to have general increases due to participation. So with participation growing substantially, you're going to see expenses grow with it. We would like to expand the rental of the middle school gym. It worked very well for us the last few years where we've been able to utilize that facility. If you've ever been in the community center when basketball is playing, it overwhelms that building, and there's really not a lot of room for the spectator side, because when the court was painted, it was painted to maximize what they could out of basketball when they painted the lines, but it really does limit your ability to move around within the facility, and it limits how many people are in there. But it also, as the children get older, it gets a whole lot more competitive. And so having, parents right there on the line also has an impact on how the game is played too. So really, especially those older age groups, having a better basketball court and a better facility has really made that program work very well for us by having the option. Parks maintenance trends that we're seeing, so we talked about at our last meeting general, reactionary, preventative, and enhancement measures. And so we wanted to just revisit some of the trends and impacts or adjustments that you're seeing. This isn't overly comprehensive, it's just to kind of give you like a, bird's eye view. But in our general maintenance, we're seeing an increase in event support. We're also seeing expanding greenway network as these developments are building out, and they're building those components that are going to be dedicated to the town. There are some additional responsibilities that we have for maintenance. Our reactionary, we are seeing more frequent vandalism. Examples of that are the playground at Gill Street Park. The little libraries are repeatedly being vandalized, and we're also seeing it in our bathrooms some. And those things are not uncommon in parks. They're common things. But as our population grows, you're going to continue to see that more and more. So we have to respond to that. We're also seeing an increase in litter. I would love to say that we could put more trash cans out and that would fix the problem, but that's not always going to fix the problem. We try to identify areas where we're seeing concentrated trash, and we will add additional trash cans, but that doesn't, it might fix a fraction of it. So we're having to spend more time in our litter pickup as well. On the preventative side, we're seeing more frequent application of playground safety surfacing. So that safety surfacing is nothing but like a engineered wood fiber mulch. And so it wears down as kids play on it, and there's a certain level that you have to maintain it at in order to maintain safety. And so as you have more kids play on it, you have to apply additional mulch more frequently. Our turf applications and our turf management program, costs are increasing, and that's a direct reflection of inflation. Our enhancement side, so we've been working on sightline improvements at all of our parks, and so you may have noticed that at some of them, I think Community Park will probably be the most obvious. And so we've tried to really look at our park system from the user perspective. And I'll give the example. One day I went and sat at the picnic shelter beside the restrooms at Community Park and tried to watch kids play as if I had my kids playing on the playground, and I couldn't see them. Like you couldn't sit at the picnic shelter and see your kids playing because bushes were placed in direct line of sight. And so those are some examples of what we've been trying to look at. So those are safety concerns. Those are customer service concern. That's just an overall park user thing. So we also looked at areas that if I was walking on a walking path, or I was using an amenity at a facility, are there areas that could cause safety concerns? We've worked with the police department to try and review our parks to get their perspective from their training, and really work to create an environment that people feel safe in and they want to continue to come to. So those are things we'll continue to work on. We have worked on the fence renovation at Community Park, so our staff will be extremely excited that the split rail fence is gone because they got climbed on by kids, by disc golfers, anybody that was over there, and they were constantly falling. And it was just old and worn, and it needed to be replaced. And so the staff over the winter months took that project on, and they did it in-house. We are also looking at, or we've been working on the amenity standard and changing over so that our master plan recognized you need to know that you were at a Parks and Rec park or a Town of Zebulon park. And one way to do that is to have consistency in your landscaping, consistency in your signage, consistency in your trash and your benches and things like that. And so we've been working on that transition with the funding that y'all have provided for amenity replacement. So what you'll see in our 2024 request is to transition to a full-time parks and facility worker. That will come with a reduced and contract cleaning. So currently there are some contracts with cleaning our bathrooms at the parks a couple days a week, as well as contracting at the community center. We would also seek to start to reduce our landscape contract. And so this full-time parks and facility worker would assist in the cleaning of the community center, cleaning of our parks restrooms, helping us with like litter and debris removal, but would also support the maintenance crew as time allows. There's also general supply increases just from increased park use, but also from inflation, and we're seeing increased repair requirements. Any questions about parks before I move on to recreation? The first thing I want to touch on in recreation is outreach and just general social or societal type programs. And we have been working on several over the last couple of months. This isn't an entirety, the efforts that we have in our entirety over the year, but it just exemplifies some that we've worked on. So we had the mobile market that served 120 families over 4 weeks. County, the Eastern Regional Center has been involved. 4-H has been involved. And then we've had the AKAs. There's in some of the functions that we've had, various schools have participated, but the core planners for now have been Wake Med, the Chamber ourselves, and Empowered Citizens. But we have connected with Cara Nova, and they have been working on a plan to address youth mental health in communities. And this plan is going to be rolled out. It's available on their website, and I'll be happy to send a link to more information about Cara Nova and their youth mental health program. But it looks at the whole of addressing youth mental health in a community, and that there's roles of the education sector, there's roles of the community sector, and there's roles of the health sector. And then there's areas where they overlap. And so the staff with Cara Nova that we've been working with, they feel very strongly, as part of the Duke Endowment, and they feel very strongly that there's going to be funding in the next year or so to pilot this plan that they put together, and that they're going to be looking for communities that would be able to implement this plan in working with Cara Nova. And we have been talking with them about this plan because really their plan reflects very strongly what we had already started a year ago. And so figuring out how to maximize what we already started on and not having to reinvent it, but using this framework that they've already developed, and they've already got action items, they've already got recommended ways to be successful. And there's the potential that it may come with some funding opportunities. And so I'm looking forward to seeing where that conversation heads, and I'll be happy to share more information about Cara Nova and what they're doing when I have more information, but two, we have a lot more time because there's a lot there. Just an example of some outreach opportunities that we've done recently. We've participated in the truck fair at the middle school. We've taken Rec on the Go to Zebulon Baptist Church's Fall Festival. We've also gone out to the Zebulon Housing Authority. That's an initiative that Empowered Citizens started, where they're actually going into these developments to try and engage people and bring services and resources to community members that otherwise might not have access. And so we're really excited about this opportunity to continue those efforts. We've also been to Carver Elementary and Zebulon Elementary's winter events, and we had such a great time. I worked a full week one week, and I was, I think Commissioner Harrison and I were talking about it. I think it was the Carver event. And as long of a week as it had been, I really needed to go to that and interact with the kids. I was surprised how many kids from Zebulon were there. But just to have that interaction and to be able to talk with those families, and just honestly, we were there to play with the kids, and it was wonderful. So I love those opportunities. East Wake High School Career Fair was just a great opportunity to, one, talk about what we do, but we had a lot of the high schoolers express interest in coming to work with us. And we've been struggling to fill some of our positions, so that was awesome to hear that it might not have been a career that they were interested in, but they were interested in work now, so that was great. We also participated in the East Wake Academy's Read Across America. And if there's any opportunities that y'all have, or groups that you're working with, where they would like for the Parks and Rec to come out, or you think it would be a good fit for us to take Rec on the Go, or for us to just be represented, please let us know. So we're trying to expand that so we can reach more of our community. I'm not going to go in detail on all of these programs, but I did want to hit that most of our programming hits in these categories right now. So our health and fitness programming, we've been working to we talked at our last quarterly how we are transitioning and rethinking how we offer these programs, and it's been successful. We're seeing about a 25% increase year to date over last year in participation in our fitness programs, but we're also looking to bring in partners to continue to expand how we offer health programming. Our nature programming, we've made some pretty large changes in how we market that program and how we offer those programs. And so we've tried to work with different partners that have recognized names, such as the Museum of Natural Sciences. We've worked with Sylvan Heights before, but we took a step back because we went to conference last fall, and one of the things that really stuck with me when I listened to the keynote was COVID changed people. COVID changed how people go to school. COVID changed how people work. COVID just has really adjusted how people recreate at large. And we've always wanted to engage like the homeschool families. And because we believe there's a huge network, but it's grown even more since COVID. And one of the changes that we made was to offer some things during the day from time to time. So we went from having maybe 10, if we brought in Sylvan Heights, we had maybe 40 participate in a nature program. But the last couple programs we've had 80 to 90 participants in. And that's huge for us to address environmental education in our community. And so we're not doing all of them just during the week because we want to make sure that we still reach the kids, but that's just a reason why we made that transition. And so we're hoping that the ones that are participating that we've been able to hook during the week will come back for some of those that might happen at night or some on Saturdays as well. Special Pops programming, this is completely new for us. So we have not done programs directed towards specialized recreation in our department before, but we think it's very important, and we want to make sure that we have opportunities for everyone in our community when we're rolling out programs, so we don't necessarily have the capacity to do it all the time, or have something at all times, and I wish that we did. But our goal is to, right now, with the capacity that we have something that people can look forward to, have something to show them that they can tangibly participate in. So the first thing that we did was a movie night, and we're getting ready to do a bingo. We're trying to lean on some of our community partners in other communities as well to really learn what are the things that we can do without having staff that are trained and specifically dedicated to specialized recreation. Our adult and senior programming continues to be very consistent in our cultural arts programming. We have brought back adult open gym, and we're looking to expand that further. Our pickleball program continues to grow. We're looking at different partners in the community that can help us offer like financial planning. Sometimes we don't want to think about we're getting older, but your financial situation changes when you get older, and how do you plan for that, and what does that look like? So we've been trying to find programs like that we can offer as well. Our youth and teen programming, so you'll see we just rolled out our summer camps, and we have 21 themed camps. This isn't abnormal. We usually offer about that many themed summer camps throughout the summer. We are monitoring the need for all-day camp. That's going to be a big shift in how our department operates. It'll be a big shift in how you fund it. Typically, recreation summer camp programs are subsidized, and we are not hearing an overwhelming response at this time from the community that there's a need for all-day camp. We might get a few calls every summer, but we don't have the overwhelming calls for it at this time, but it is picking up. And we also are monitoring the area all-day camp offerings to see, are they filling up? And so we do try to keep a list of those so that when people do call, we can help steer them in a direction, but we are at least monitoring, are those other camps filling and our kids don't have somewhere to go? Because that's another thing that will pop for us when we need to make that transition. So I think it is definitely the direction that you're going to need to go to before too long, but I don't know that we're there yet. And then we just have general all ages programs. And again, we've transitioned in how we've done marketing. We've transitioned in how we recognize people recreate. And I'm gonna give the example of bingo. So where we used to maybe have 25 people participate, the last two, we've had over 90. And I think this week we had 70 to 80 participate in it. And it was a little bit of a simple change, other than changing how we market it, but also, recognizing that not everybody wants to just recreate at 7 o'clock on a Friday or Saturday morning, that even if they're working parents, people that are working from home, they have a little bit more flexibility in their schedules, where maybe they don't take a lunch and they take their lunch at 4 o'clock, or maybe they take their lunch at 10 o'clock and they want to come to a fitness program instead. So recognizing how they've had those transitions and how that the workforce has changed, we are trying to change our thinking there as well. So what we're seeing in our 24 requests is an increase in participation as well as expanded programming. And I'm not going to go through this list. We talked about this last time, but I think it's important. It's just a reflection of the wonderful community support that's in Zebulon, and the interest of different organizations to work in our community. But I think it's important to recognize that we cannot do this by ourselves. The town isn't the answer to everything. And when we have the ability to partner in order to better serve our communities, that's something that we're gonna definitely look into. And so this list is very similar to the one you saw last year. I've got a second page, and this has some newer ones on it. We have worked with the downtown businesses to offer downtown events, activities, and to provide, or to be vendors, but also to provide like the kids' activities and make sure that their businesses are open when we have events downtown. We've been working with the MLK Committee and Todd's Productions LLC on the Juneteenth event. We've been working to engage Wake County Special Olympics. They primarily focus on programming in Raleigh, and we've been trying to figure out how we can get that recognized here in Zebulon. And so we have been working with them to assess need as well as interest. And so some surveys, if they haven't already gone out, they're going out very shortly. And we're hoping that that will tell us what we need to do or what we can do to move forward with that. We've been working with Wake County Extension. We've had that a great working relationship with them for many, many years. But we have really been trying to understand everything that they could potentially have available to us and to the community members so that we can expand our programming with things that they have vetted and are successful. We recognize that there's a lot of opportunity for our youth and teen programs. Mental health is definitely a concern in youth today. Empowered Citizens has a great network, access to interns that can help continue to further these efforts, and so we're continuing to work with that organization as well. The Steel Magnolias Garden Club, they've been a great partner again for many years with the Pollinator Garden and the Blue Star Memorial. And then Zebulon Downtown Arts Council has been great at providing art-based activities at different events and programs for us. Events, you see, we've had a series, we offer a series of movie nights, concerts, Veterans Day. We've had the Candy Cane Lane and downtown tree lighting, the Winter's Celebration, as well as Spring Fest. There are other events that this isn't like a complete list. We also have like Superhero Day or the Easter egg hunt. There's a variety of different levels and categories of events that we have. So what you're going to see in the 24 request is expanded offering as well as enhanced safety measures. The next item on recreation is adapting space. So I talked with y'all about how we've adapted the early education sensory room. When we first opened it, we opened it 2 days a week, and it wasn't enough. We were getting a great response. The room was starting to fill up, so now it's open daily. And to date, we've had 123 kids come and play in that space. And so it's been awesome to get to see the kids have a great time, and it's been a low lift for us and from a capacity standpoint, and being able to just offer this space and it be parent supervised, and it's ultimately self-led recreation, but it's providing a service that we're being shown was needed. Additional considerations would be to take a look at the exercise room and transition it to more of a multi-purpose use that could still serve exercise programming, but maybe offer other programming or be more inviting and welcoming to other programming as well, especially as we try to maximize the use of our facility. And another consideration would be to transition the warming kitchen to more of a learning kitchen environment. And we could do a little bit of that with the current setup, but not much. We've done some programming in there, but there's just not a lot of space. So we could better utilize that space to offer or to support programming and not just be a warming kitchen. When we look at the community center, we're really trying, like as I just mentioned, think about spaces differently. We're also looking at legacy programs, and going back to that question I was considering earlier or referenced earlier is why is this really the best thing in the big picture? We recognize that we had a strong walking program, and our seniors have heavily utilized the community center for that programming. But we found ourselves not planning programs for other age groups around extended hours of walking or things like that. I'm going to give the example of Skyhawks and the preschool programming. So we found ourselves trying to work around a service for a group of people that they had a lot of access to the community center, but we weren't serving other age groups at the same time. So those are things, we're not trying to take away a service from anybody, but we're also trying to recognize that we might have to balance some things in order to expand how we're serving our community. We have found ourselves in our programming consistently scheduling on Saturday mornings. And so although we don't have operating hours on Saturday, I'm having to staff it on Saturday mornings to run our programs, because once we do it for one program, I ask staff to find additional programs that would work on a Saturday. So we would like to go ahead and just expand our operating hours on Saturdays mornings, and that way our community has additional access to the facility, but we honestly think that it would be utilized. And I want to talk about the difference of a recreation center and a community center and how they operate. So your recreation center really or your community center really operates more as a rec center that's programmed. It's less like a community center where you can just come in and just kind of have free reign over different facilities or different amenities. And I think the biggest reason for that is when the community center was open, there were funding restrictions. Your situation was completely different than it is today. In 2009, when the facility opened, you were starting to see and go through, and you were seeing down the line some very hard financial times for government. And you were also coming directly off of the recession of 2008. And so you had a tight funding support for that facility. And so it really limited the ability for that self-led general access. Kids can't just come in and play basketball because you have to be able to have the staffing to oversee them. You can't take responsibility for children but not have the ability to, provide the proper support for that. And so we think it's time to transition, and in order to do that, we're going to have to staff it appropriately to be able to support that effort. And so a great step in that direction would be to staff it to operate that way and start to operate that way in your after-school hours. And so you'll see that in our 24 request. There will also be just general supply expense increases associated with the growing participation in the facility. So our focus when we developed the operating budget for fiscal year 24 was to look at our service gaps when it comes to programs and parks, and we wanted to maximize our impact through partnerships, outreach, and reimagining. And we showed you this graph last year during the budget season, and so we're just bringing it back to you. We are not recommending that this change for the next couple of years. At this point this year, we will continue to revisit it each year, just like we would with the capital improvement plan, based on what programming is looking at, like the community growth, as well as the different projects that you take on. We are recommending a transition in the 2024 from the maintenance supervisor to the parks and facilities worker. We are recommending the athletics programmer and the recreation assistant at the community center to be full-time. So in summary, we would like to meet growing need of athletic programs by funding the athletics coordinator to respond to park and facility use increases with transitions from contracts to full-time staff, as well as general preventative response and enhancement maintenance efforts to continue. We'd like to adapt the use of the community center by transitioning front desk part-time to full-time, as well as to use part-time to support a facility open for youth to have a regular place to go after school, as well as to open the facility on Saturdays. We would also like to be responsive to expanding efforts, inflation and cost increases, which is reflective in participation increases, as well as material and entertainment industry increases. Are there any questions?
Any questions from any of the board members?
Good job. It's good to see that we're growing and we're needing this.
Do we know the participation in pickleball as far as youth versus adults?
Pickleball is primarily an adult, but we're starting to see more and more youth wanting to engage in it. So we're starting to see youth participate in some of our scheduled times. I could reach out and get the exact numbers if you want it on like the pickleball lessons. I don't have that off the top of my head, what that is, but just industry-wide, it is primarily an adult sport, but it is growing in youth.
There may be some joint efforts coming down the line about youth pickleball.
Yeah, it's definitely something that there's a huge effort. The pickleball, I want to call it an industry in and of itself, not just a sport, but it really is. They're very organized, and there's a lot of pride in the people and a lot of passion that play pickleball, and they really want to engage others. And you're starting to see a lot of that effort aimed towards youth.
Commissioner Harrison?
Sheila, you may have this and I just haven't seen it or looked for it, but I was looking at the different positions that you have in for the years to come. Is there a career ladder path for Parks and Recs? Could you send it to me? Or to us? I just want to look at it and compare it to some of this, please. All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions from any of the board? Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila.
Mayor, I shared this with our advisory board. It's something we developed for them. A lot of this information we went over tonight, but I did want to share it with y'all as well.
You get to
While we're under transition, I'll point out one of the things that Sheila mentioned in that slide, and I say this because this board is very focused and interested in citizen engagement. We have a big need for volunteers, and when we talk about advisory boards, that can maybe be a big ask. But when you're talking about coaching a child's team, it's a little bit less demanding, and also there's a lot more vested interest in it. So just wanted to share that with you. If you come across someone who wants to get engaged, we've got a big need for that. So our next quarterly report is from the Planning Department. And with that, I'll recognize Planning Director Michael Clark.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Tonight for our quarterly report, we're really going to examine what the Planning Department's purpose is, kind of some of the stats over the past year, as well as a prediction of what we're going to be doing moving forward. Our planning department's really broken into several different divisions. The first of the division is probably the most recognizable and one that most people associate with planning, and that's our current planning division. Right now, this is primarily our senior planner, as well as our planner one, that really focuses on the review of the applications that come in for site plans, sign permits, all of those different elements. Typically, it's reactionary to the to development interest, as well as citizens looking to build accessory structures, additions onto their house, and also for businesses that are looking to locate here. Over the past year, I've supplemented and helped out with this group quite a bit as we're kind of transitioning our roles. The second of the roles is more of our long-range planning. This is been more or less headed up by myself for the past couple of years. Really looks at text amendments that are moving forward, modifications to our long-range master plan or comprehensive land use plan, our comprehensive transportation plan, as well as the policies and procedures within our department that really help navigate the future direction of the town. With our comprehensive land use plan and transportation plan, while these were just adopted approximately a year and a half ago, these are something that we do need to be considering for the future years. Typically, the shelf life for a comprehensive land use plan is anywhere from 5 to 10 years. At a minimum, it should be reviewed in 5 years to determine if it's still adequate based on the needs of the community or if it needs to be a full comprehensive update. Most plans do not make it more than 10 years. Communities change such that they definitely need significant modifications and updates. The third of the divisions is our GIS and mapping division. This is really housed by our Planner 2 right now. This is one of the more customer-facing elements of our website with our interactive development map. Not only does this individual create maps for the planning department, but they also create maps for all the other departments and several entities within the community, such as the downtown program, the Chamber of Commerce sometimes will ask for zoning maps or future land use maps for when businesses or business interests might stop into there. And we really help to provide a service that goes beyond the walls of our department in that context. The fourth of the divisions is our code enforcement. Once again, this is a very reactionary department at this point in time. It is housed by or run by our current code enforcement official. And right now it is a reaction-only basis. Somebody calls in a complaint, we go out there and we review it. We also, due to the size and scope of our department, this individual is also tasked with going out and measuring setbacks for all the new homes that are being built to make sure the home is going to be constructed and put in the proper location. And then they go back out before the home receives their certificate of occupancy to make sure that whatever was approved was actually what got built. So this individual more or less is wearing two hats in between our current planning division as well as our code enforcement. Finally is our permitting division. This, we collaborate with Wake County Building Services. We do have a planning technician that is in-house that does all the intake of the permit and processes the workflow and really manages that process. We do subcontract, however, with Wake County Building Divisions for the plan review as it relates to the North Carolina Building Code, both the commercial and residential building code, as well as the inspections that they go out, they do the inspections to determine is it compliant with those reviews. The department objectives are really fourfold. First and foremost is to provide exceptional customer service. Please note I didn't say good customer service or acceptable customer service. It has to be exceptional customer service. Unfortunately, there was a time and place where the planning department was looked at as saying no to everything that came in. They had a very heavy hand when it came to code enforcement. It was just the sending out notices of violations. There was no discussion or conversations with property owners. Over the past 4 years, we've really worked diligently to change that perception within the department, where everybody's expected to have the heart of a teacher. It's kind of like Chief Boykin talks about, educate and then enforce. We do that not only in our code enforcement realm, but also working with the developers. 99.9% of the plans that come before us do not meet our regulations the first time. We don't just mark them up and say, no, try again. We walk them through the processes to help them understand not only what the regulations are, but why the regulations are in place. We look to improve efficiencies. There was a time 4 years ago when if somebody submitted for a residential building permit in one of these standard neighborhoods, it was taking somewhere between 5 to 12 weeks for them to receive that building permit back before they can start construction. We've dropped that down to 5 to 10 business days. And a lot of that is to do with us really looking at how the systematic process moves forward in terms of what the specific tasks are being done in terms of the review of those building permits. Also how we communicate with the building, the developers and the builders for these structures. Having pre-application meetings with the developers so they understand what is their expectations. We're looking to create a clean and safe environment, and a lot of this goes back to a lot of the details are found in both our comprehensive land use plan, transportation plan, and unified development ordinance. None of those 3 documents were in place when I started 4 years ago, but because of the text in there, we're able to really start moving forward. Additionally, with our general law regulation modifications that have come about primarily over the past 2 years, we're really starting to take a much more progressive approach when it comes to code enforcement. We now have regulations pertaining to the appearance of buildings primarily in downtown, but also elsewhere within the community. We also have regulations where if somebody's a repeat offender, after 4 violations within a calendar year, we have the capability to, instead of continuing to send notices of violations and wait for them to bring in compliance, go to remedy the violation and bill the property owner for those. Primarily it's tall grass and weeds, trash and debris, those type of things. And over the past year, we've actually only had to use that a couple times because property owners are starting to realize that they are expected to proactively maintain their property as opposed to wait for the town to tell them to mow their lawn. Finally is competent and timely plan reviews. I mentioned a little bit about the building permit review time, but this goes above and beyond just that. As we increase complexity and intensity of these development plans coming in, we need to be able to make sure that we react in a much more efficient time. These developers, when they put together their scope of projects, hiring consulting companies, they're really looking at, okay, from the time of pre-application to the time that we can start selling lots is how long. And that calculation helps to determine their rate of return. We want to make sure that we're utilizing the best resource of the time that we have, as well as the developers, to make sure that we much rather invest that money into the development project in the terms of amenities and quality homes, as opposed to additional review fees. Kind of looking at the building permit trends, these are the certificate of occupancies from 2017 to 2022. You'll note that it's been progressive with the exception of a little bit due to COVID and some supply chain issues in 2021. However, 2022, these are calendar year 2022, we more than made up. In 2017, we issued a total of 74 certificate of occupancies. Last year, we issued 365 certificate of occupancies. Right now, at this moment in time, we have 188 units under construction within the town and 2,424 units that have vested rights that have yet to begin construction for the neighborhoods that are being built. Keep in mind, each of these homes, we run these calculations. It's 2.69 persons per dwelling unit for your typical residential home. Apartments are a little bit less. But these are families moving into town. These are first Christmases in front of the Christmas tree. These are prom pictures on the front porch. When I work with my staff, I really try to have them keep that in mind, that these aren't just numbers and statistics, but these are future citizens moving to our town. These are future volunteers that are going to participate in our parks and recreation programs. These are future members that look to serve on our boards and maybe even run for commission at some point in time. But our growth is not unique. The American Planning Association just released an Equity Guide to Zoning and Zoning Policy. And it really goes into the detail of what communities can do to be more holistic in terms of equity as opposed to the regulations. And a particular quote really jumped out at me. It noted 3.79 million, the number of housing units in the United States needs to to address our housing supply crisis. So while we're experiencing quite a bit of growth here in Central North Carolina, this isn't isolated to Central North Carolina. This is a much greater process. And this guide talks about things that can be done to help supplement the housing supply, everything from accessory dwelling units to cluster developments to apartment complexes, increasing density to help reduce the need for the automobile, revitalization of older, more dense urban areas. But specifically, it is extreme here. And we need to take this in consideration as we continue to grow. The housing, the news, both local as well as national news, really notes that the Raleigh and the Triangle area is one of the fastest growing areas in America. When we look at what these projections look like, these numbers actually came from the North Carolina Office of Budget and Management. 2020, the population between Wake County, Franklin County, and Johnston County was just over 1.4 million people. If you look forward to 2050, they're projecting an additional 1 million residents moving to those three counties collectively. Now, I pick out those three counties because we are in Wake County and we share borders with Johnston and Franklin counties. Sure, Nash and Wilson counties are growing, but when you look at the map of the major road networks, we have what will become an interstate freeway, 64 to 64, eventually turning to I-87 and 587. That's going to be dictated by the Federal Highway Commission. That's not something that we even have a say in. However, when you look at the connections between Wake County, Johnston County, and Franklin County, that's that road network. Those are our state roads. Those are folks that are, if they don't move to Zebulon, they're going to be moving all around Zebulon and still using our network of roads to access the future I-87. So it's something that we really need to take in consideration as we're looking at our long-range projections in terms of our staffing. So in terms of our growth assessment, it's really broken into two factors. The first factor is population. And there's no question population is growing. We are just short of 9,600 residents right now, with current estimates of, for the number of units that have vested rights, we're gonna hit 18,000. With the number of proposals, we're gonna, if everything gets approved, it's gonna be around 22,000. So that population increase will have an impact on our staff surfaces. But the other is the development pressure. As new residential developments come in, as new commercial developments come in, as new industrial developments come in, each of these are going to dictate where we go with staffing in the future and what resources we need internally to help address those issues. This is kind of an overcap of from 2017 to 2022. And you'll note that we've had quite a bit of activity over the past several years. COs issued, I apologize, that last number should be 365 instead of 372. But you see a progressive increase in those. Code enforcement cases, you see a progressive increase in those. Public hearings, we had 11 last year, or in 21, and we had 7 last year. The one that really catches my eye is you go down to the second to last column, plan reviews. These are everything from a sign permit to a 200 to 300 lot residential subdivision to a mixed use development, all looking to come in. We had 223 reviews in 2022. Now take a look at the next line down. In 2017, we had 4 staff dedicated to planning. In 2022, we only had 6 staff dedicated to planning. With those number increases, it's remarkable that we've been able to do what we've been able to do, especially given the improvements in time and in efficiency, as well as the increase in complexity and depth of these reviews. But a lot of that comes down to hiring quality and competent staff and making sure that we're able to retain them. So the staff that we currently have is myself acting as the director, and then I supervise a planning technician, a senior planner, and the code enforcement official. Our senior planner goes on to review the work of the planner 2 as well as the planner 1. That center section really spearheads a lot of the planning and mapping efforts. Code enforcement, self-explanatory, and the planning technician deals with all the building permit elements. And then I fill in where there's gaps depending upon workload at any one given point in time. Ultimately, our goal is to maintain service and start a proactive code enforcement. We've heard repeatedly over the past year that there's certain situations going on. And sometimes things get brought to our attention. Some things, unfortunately, do not. There was a recent situation where a building was painted without consulting with the town staff prior, based on the scope and intent. That resulted in a notice of violation that went out, and I had a conversation with the property owner yesterday, and he's weighing his options to determine what course of action he wants to pursue. One alternative is hiring a second code enforcement officer. This not only allows us to be a lot more efficient and with our current response-based code enforcement, it also allows us to go into the realm of proactive code enforcement, going out, seeing where the tall grass and weeds are, seeing where the junk and debris is, and then having time, once again, to work with the property owners to help them bring their property in compliance, as opposed to taking that heavy hand enforcement action of just an immediate notice of violation. Once again, it's better to educate the property owners on what the regulations are to help them, prevent them from moving forward and having go into a violation in the future. We want to maintain review and response times. This will result in a second planner 1. Not only is this going to be development reviews or sign permit reviews or somebody wanting to build a deck on the back of their house type of reviews, it's also going to help out with our permit technician. The complexity of these big projects that are coming before you and the lists of multiple conditions in terms of how much percentage of facade needs to be brick or stone, the number of units that must have J drives as an example. This really allows for the planner 1 to get involved to make sure that it's doing a comprehensive zoning review to prevent slip-ups of, only 18% of the homes have a brick or stone facade as opposed to the required 20% as an example. The other is something that was brought up as a question with the last is we're in the process of structuring a career ladder primarily towards retention. As you know, hiring planners right now is an extraordinarily difficult process, especially planners with experience and preferably ones that don't have to relocate from the other side of the country. And one of the best mechanisms to do that is to really support the staff that's in place. So we're going to be looking to establish that career ladder. So with investing in staff in the planning side of it, most planning processes, somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience with planning might start as a planning technician. This is the kind of fundamental basic review elements. Is it a residential property? What's the building permit process moving forward? Those type of things. After a while, our career ladder would have somebody move into a senior planning technician. This would be based on a combination of experience as well as training opportunities and potential credentials, such as their certified zoning official credential. From there, they might move into a planner 1. Typically, somebody who graduates from a school with a degree in land use planning or something comparable to that might start as a planner 1. Right now, we have a planner one that's doing an exceptional job. She's actually capable of doing reviews far beyond what most people in that position would be able to do. But that's a lot to do with her experiences from where she received her undergrad degree. Our Planner 2 position, once again, you start establishing credentials, length of time, and experiences. This is where somebody might start actually doing presentations before the Planning Board and before the Board of Commissioners. The level of reviews would be increasing. Additionally, additional credentials might be taken into consideration. A Planner 3 is really where somebody's really getting focused on specific project specialties. They're going to specialize in current planning or in long-range planning. This is also where somebody starts thinking about taking their AICP exam. In order to just sit for the AICP exam, you have to have 4 to 5 years of work experience on top of graduating from an accredited university. So it's not something that anybody can just sit and take. There's a systematic process that must be in place before you're able to even be eligible to take the exam. From the Planner 3 would move into a senior planner level role. Once again, this is somebody that has their CZO, is eligible to sit for the AICP exam, and has gone through several other courses, such as advanced plan review from the School of Government, or other resources, and then ultimately moving into a planning manager. This is kind of thinking of it almost like an assistant director, but specific to the planning element of the department. And once again, that's going to be somebody who has several years of management of experience. They have their AICP, their CZO. They've worked in multiple municipalities, possibly even private sector experience, where they're able to bring those different experiences to the department to help us expand and grow beyond our current capabilities. Code enforcement's a little simpler. Typically, it starts out with a code enforcement officer, and this individual is typically somebody that will have some sort of plan review or law enforcement background, somebody who understands legal processes and is able to help grow into really defining that role. Once they receive their CZO and have several years of experience, and possibly even some supervisory experience or training at least in supervisory, they would be able to move into a senior code enforcement officer, and they would be reviewing other code enforcement officers. Ultimately, the cap of this would be the chief code enforcement officer, where they might be overseeing multiple code enforcement officers or even supervising other supervisors in the code enforcement realm. Granted, it'll be a couple years before we need more than 2 code enforcement officers, but it's definitely something that we want to be able to put in place for our staff to work to achieve, as opposed to trying to go and seek those opportunities in other municipalities. Capital action items, to shift gears a little bit. Something that I've spoken about in the past is the downtown sub-area plan. This is a specific component that's called out in our comprehensive land use plan for us to take a deep dive, very detailed approach on the future direction of the actual structures, uses, operations within our downtown. What are the sidewalks going to look like? What specific mix of businesses make the best amount of sense? The outdoor furniture, the pedestrian connections, all of those elements, bringing those all together. You look like you have a question.
Yes, so how would this differ from a downtown master plan?
It's the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yep. Yeah, it's essentially the same thing. It's a very geographically focused master plan.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I...
Yep, you're on point with that. The second is related to downtown. We all know that large truck traffic, all traffic in downtown is a bit of a concern. The speeds of the vehicles going through, the size of the vehicles that are going through. And there's certain things that we can do to create induced congestion on our, in downtown. I know congestion on roads is typically a bad thing, but when you get downtown, you want the vehicles to go slow. You don't want them going fast. You don't want them passing each other. And doing things such as bulb outs and stamped crosswalks, this really creates pinch points at particular intersections, which help deter through traffic. All of the GPS units now really look at traffic times, and if there's induced demand in traffic through downtown, it's going to naturally start rerouting that traffic elsewhere. It creates a safer pedestrian environment. But the design for that would be approximately $80,000, and depending upon the scope moving forward, beyond the design would determine, but typically the design for something like this is approximately 10 to 12% of the total cost. The last of the capital items is kind of a more urgent need. Over the past several years, we've had a plotter that we've leased from a company, and up until about 6 months ago, it did the job. However, we've come into some issues where every time that we go to print something off a large scale, like a map or something, our planner 2 is actually taking the motherboard out, taking chips out, letting it sit for 10, 15 minutes, reassembling the operation, saying a quick prayer, and then hoping it runs. Unfortunately, it doesn't always do that. The scanner that we have, in the past 4 years, I think we've scanned maybe 8 documents because it does not want to stay connected to our network. Our IT staff has looked at it multiple times, and it's finally came to realize that the hardware and the software that operates it's just so far out of date that it's no longer serviceable. Specifically, it's running Windows 95 to kind of put in perspective. We could purchase two separate machines. However, nowadays with the technology, it's a lot more cost efficient to purchase one machine that has both capabilities. And those do run between $10,000 to $14,000. The model that we're looking at specifically is approximately $11,000. So to kind of summarize our FY24 requests, the second code enforcement officer, not including benefits or a vehicle or an iPad, would be about $50,000. Our second planner 1, not including computer, software, or benefits, would be about $50,000. Replacing our plotter scanner is about $11,000. Downtown master plan is about $80,000. And then the bulb outs and stamp crosswalk design would be about $80,000. So in terms of long range, beyond this next fiscal year, as I noted, there's 2 factors that need to be considered: population development pressure, and sometimes when you get the perfect storm of both, there's additional services that are needed. Population is going to dictate our code enforcement schedule. The more people that move here, the more code enforcement cases that we're going to have. It's not a development-specific element, but it is a population-specific element. Typically, the rule of thumb is anywhere from 5 to 8,000, you can have 1 code enforcement officer. When you go above and beyond that, 8 to 12,000, you really need 2. Some municipalities have a benchmark of 1 code enforcement officer for every 5,000 residents. Once you get above 20,000, you can start scaling that back to 1 per 10,000 residents. But it does also determine upon what sort of code enforcement programs and proactive education opportunities that are out there. Right now, we don't have the staff resources to have those educational capabilities due to the reactionary basis of our code enforcement program. At some point, as our population increases, we're going to need an administrative assistant, somebody that can help assemble the joint public hearing packets, somebody who will be able to handle phone calls, process the plan sets that are coming in through IDT or through through Energov, which is our planning building permit software, helping to route those projects to the appropriate individual. Right now, our planner one does a lot of these tasks, but at some point, their work capacity is going to exceed their capabilities to do both elements. At some point, go ahead, sorry. At some point, we're going to need yet a third planner one. Especially with additional businesses coming into town, things such as sign permits, business special event permits, the small additions onto homes, decks. Right now, we have a lot of new homes coming in. There's a cycle when these homes start needing repairs. They start coming in for additions, additional outbuildings such as sheds and garages. These are typically items that are handled by a planner one. With the increased development pressure, however, we're going to need another planner two at some point. These are all probably realistically within the next 5 to 10 years. Once again, those are going to be the additional levels of review, presentations to the board and to the planning board that can really oversee those efforts and make sure that those documents are done properly, and then following up that any changes to the Unified Development Ordinance would be in compliance with those new plans. Finally, in terms of development pressure, a full-time GIS specialist. Right now, our Planner 2 does a terrific job at maintaining the interactive development map. It's updated every Friday based on new projects come in, and that's everything from a zoning compliance permit to a major subdivision or a mixed-use project. He makes sure that everything gets put on there, that the plan sets are there to help create that transparency. But there's also the resources necessary for providing services to the other departments, such as printing out maps for new police officers and new firefighters. One of the things that we do regularly is print off a couple maps when we get new phases of development for the police department to help for training and in case there is incident, for command incident planning, where if they have to determine routing, such as when Zebulon Middle was on lockdown, they were able to already understand the road network and help to navigate traffic around that. Then when you have the perfect storm of both, there's also starting to look at, do we bring building services in-house? Right now, I noted that we subcontract with Wake County Building Services. At some point, do we bring these individuals in-house? And it's not just one individual. We'll need a level 3 building inspector. Much like planners, there's different levels of expertise, and a level 3 has the capability of reviewing everything from a basic residential home all the way up to something like GSK or Vinventions or NEMACO, where there's much more complexity in the regulations that would be applicable to that. A trades inspector, these are the individuals that review the plumbing, the HVAC, the electrical systems. It's a specialty trade to make sure that it's in compliance with the applicable regulations. And then a permit technician to help do all the intake and plan distribution for these and make sure that the inspectors are keeping up with the reviews as well as the inspections. And that completes my presentation. I'm available if you have any questions.
Commissioner Miles?
I see that you have this for administrative assistant. So the current one that you have, what is her job entail?
We don't currently have an administrative assistant. We have a planner one, or a planning technician that handles both phone call intake as well as her regular planning one responsibilities. In terms of assembling the joint public hearing packets, that's something that I do. I print them, I stuff envelopes, I put the labels on, and then our code enforcement officer delivers them.
So the young lady sits at the window, what does she do?
She's a planning technician. She does all the permit intake. She reviews the building permits for compliance with the conditions for each of the subdivisions. She coordinates with Wake County in terms of making sure the inspectors are getting it out there for the proper inspections. She also coordinates with our code enforcement officer for when he has to go out for setback as well as certificate of occupancy inspections. And then she coordinates with our Public Works Department on the infrastructure inspections that have to take place before certificate of occupancy is issued.
Also, is there a cost with the Wake County sub-out? Is there a cost associated with that for the municipality?
Yes, but it's not a cost that we directly incur. It is part of the building permit cost that we charge. It goes through their permitting software, and while they may pay us, that goes directly to Wake County, and then we get reimbursed a portion of that on a monthly basis for our review fees. So the money is actually paid directly to Wake County for our building permits, and then we get reimbursed a portion of it.
Next question, the economic developer, she doesn't follow up on you? I looked at the chart structure, she doesn't follow up on you at all? Make sure I just understand that.
Yes and no. That's going to be next month's presentation. For the next couple of years, I supervise the economic development specialist, but at some point, that's going to roll into its own separate and independent department. But for the foreseeable future, it'll be still something that I'm going to be supervising. However, you'll note that there's going to be 2 budget presentations, and next month is specifically going to be economic development.
You also stated at the beginning of your presentation, it's hard to kind of find planners. Can you, in your personal opinion, what is that rationale behind that?
Everybody's retiring and everybody's going to the private sector. We, as a municipality, cannot compete with the amount of money that's being provided by these consultants. I can tell you personally, I've received offers from the private sector making profoundly more than what I make now. And that's not unusual for planning directors in Wake County.
So with that said, what keeps you here then?
I love my job. I like small towns. And more so is working for a municipality, you get to see the completion of projects. You get to build relationships with the citizens. It's not just to create a plan and walk away. You get to see the long, drawn-out process, and you get to look back at the end of your career and bring your grandkids here and say, I helped make a difference here.
Thank you. One last thing, ICP exam, can you just kind of give me a little bit of just the basic of that, what that consists of?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
The AICP exam?
Yeah.
Just a little bit of information on that.
Okay. It's the American Institute of Certified Planners. It is overseen by the American Planning Association. It is a nationwide exam that has specific educational as well as experience benchmarks before you're eligible to sit for it. It is broken into multiple sections that go everywhere from best practices to sustainability practices to history of land use planning. Joe teases me because I always talk about the creation of land use planning in the city of Ur. It goes into past trends and different models of planning. Typically, the exam takes approximately 4 hours, and it does not have a very high pass rate. It's an extraordinarily difficult exam, and there's a lot of planners that just do not take it because they don't do well on tests.
So currently, like somebody like Aaron, where he's at now.
Yeah.
It would take him how long to take that exam? He's currently been, I think, 2 years thereabouts?
Yeah, he has about 2.5 years of experience. He'll have to work for another 2 years before he's eligible to take it. Adam, our new senior planner, he is going to be going to training this fall in terms of some of the prep study courses, and then he will be sitting for it next spring.
Okay, thank you.
But Adam also has 10 years of experience too.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, before we continue, can we take 5 minutes?
Mayor, let me just interject. If, while you're taking your break, if you all have some time, start looking at the project sheets just after page 94 in your packet. Perusing that, we're going to ask the board to go through a prioritization exercise in a little bit. If you could start just taking a look at those projects and identifying your top 5 If you're really productive, identify your top 10. And if you're really productive, identify 3 to 5 that you don't think are a pressing need. So I wanted to just interject that during your break time, if you could just start to look at that, so when we get to it, you're just a little bit ahead.
Page 94. 94.
After the bond.
10-minute, 15-minute? 10-minute recess.
I charge it more all the time, but you know, you don't know these old phones like this.
They'll go dead in a heartbeat.
I don't like these things.
Okay.
Grandma.
I got you covered.
Okay, you can go now.
Sorry.
It was my fault. She had to go get my phone. I think they are.
Reconvene.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Welcome to Daylight Savings Time. It's not really 8 o'clock, it's only 7. Got the legal quarterly report and budget request for you. I'm gonna give you the spoiler right now. The budget request is $275,000. You'll see it at the end of the presentation. We'll talk about the duties and responsibilities of the town attorney, scope, professional conduct, the statutes that authorize it. We'll talk about the analysis and evolution of legal services, growth-driven. I mean, that's the key word in all of this. We'll also provide historical review year to year and legal services analysis, a summary. And then you'll have a little booklet in the back of your package that talks about who the Wyrick Robbins Legal Department members are that contribute to representing the town and some of the key projects, and of course the legal budget. Scope of duties, responsibilities of the town attorney. It shall be the duty to prosecute and defend all lawsuits, to render advisory opinions to the mayor, board of commissioners, the town manager, and the heads of various departments, to attend meetings of the board, advisory board, to prepare, review, approve deeds, contracts, bonds, or other legal documents, to draft, review, and approve proposed ordinances, to perform such other services of legal nature as required by the board. Basically, the attorney's job is a function of whatever the board wants it to be. Now, rules of professional conduct talked about loyalty, confidentiality, and communication. We are a town. I represent a town. So who is my client? Well, my client is the elected officials. The elected officials are the spokespeople for the citizens of Zebulon. So when I do my work, I try to think about my representation of the citizens, and I think about the elected officials as the citizens speaking through the elected officials. My duty is to the governing board, but I also provide services to the board, the manager, and employees. I represent the citizens of the town of Zebulon. Citizens speak through their elected officials. I never forget that. Statutes are set out in the North Carolina General Statutes and the town charter. Both have descriptions of the town attorney. Ultimately, the board controls how legal services are provided. Growth-driven legal assessment. Scope of legal services directly related to population growth. Population drives the demand for services. Demand for services manifest in 2 ways. Can anybody guess what they are? Got a pop quiz? We do more of what we're already doing and new services to meet demand. Legal services have evolved from as-needed outside counsel to a more integrated legal department. And that's what Wyrick Robbins provides with the subject matter experts that we have to help us. All right, we're going to look at some charts, pie charts by year, cost comparisons, and the different categories of legal services. And the first one here is from the period of July 2021 to December 2021. You'll see that during that period, we had $179,000 worth of legal fees. A huge percentage of that was growth-driven matters, $131,000, 73%. Departmental services, meetings, intergovernmental, those are all relatively small components of it. This year, however, is a little different story. Growth-driven has dropped down by about $100,000, and meetings have gone up by about $25,000. I explain that this way. A legal budget of $275,000 includes a $50,000 who knows factor. because every municipality faces events that they had no idea were going to happen. And in my experience, that's a $50,000 factor. So if you look at this at $118,000 for 6 months, it's, oh gosh, $70,000 less than the same period of the year before. And if we just annualize it, that's about $236,000. So 50,000 more or less would be 275,000. So this is not the first time that we've had a drop in the dollar amount of legal services in any year. I will forecast that the next 6 months will be greater in terms of fees than the first 6 months, just because of what we see coming down the pipeline. But it's just something to keep in mind. It does vary, and that 50%, I mean $50,000, who knows what factor, is really hard to predict. Here's another way to look at the pie chart. You'll see the way that we have it divvied up, and it's got that year-to-year comparison. Here's another way to look at it with a bar graph, where the blue meetings are the blue columns are the July 21, December 21, the orange are July 2022, December 2022. So these are things that you can do. The analysis in 2021, the growth-related projects really carried over from the prior years. We had the Autumn Lakes fee and lieu dispute. There was an old town hall property line dispute. North Arundel condemnation was full-fledged. Growth-driven from that period was $125,000, just growth-driven. Now, in July through December 2022, I focused on meeting growth. The budget for meetings is a function. I've tried to figure out why. Why did the meeting legal fee go up higher? Well, it's because the board and the staff have emphasized preparation for boards and implementation of policies. The legal function is expanding to include training and policy development. I think that the board is valuing preparation and commitment to being ready to deal with their policies and with their initiatives more thoroughly. Hence, more commitment to meeting time. So in summary, municipal boards are operating in an increasingly complex, risky environment. There's just no way around that. The stakes are higher. People are coming in with big projects, big money. And if they don't get what they want, they're likely to be upset. And that's going to put people on edge, and that's going to make them litigious. Legal services are no longer provided by a solo outside counsel. Maybe there are in certain areas, but it's not the way of the future. You're going to be replaced by a legal department with resources from a broad range of legal practice areas. The cost of departmental services, the services that lawyers provide to the various departments and the town staff, has remained pretty consistent. But it's also decreased as a percentage of the total cost of legal services. Meeting-related costs have increased as board and staff increase commitment to preparation for policy initiatives. And then historically, and for the foreseeable future, it's all about growth. That's going to drive costs. Unpredictable events drive costs. I mentioned that. That's that $50,000 fudge factor. And legal services are not exclusively a cost. We've made some good money by good legal services in this town. The GSK property, for example, that was an immediate $1.2 million gross benefit compared to the price that we paid for that land. The EMC building, that's probably a $400,000 gross benefit. The sale of Green Pace Road, just enforcement of costs and other things that the legal services can provide bring revenues to the town coffers. Now, this is section 3 on legal resources and projects. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time here. You have this in your booklets. It talks about what we do and why a team approach to legal services is important. It talks about me, it's my 15th year of being the town attorney. I couldn't be more honored to do that. We talk about Sam Slater. Sam is the bomb. I mean, he is the best second I've ever had in this job. He is thoughtful, insightful, and he has an incredible demeanor. Charles Archie is my go-to guy for real estate stuff. Chidi Madhu He is a really incredible resource. He's very bright, and he does a lot of research and has a great way of simplifying complex legal issues. He's very familiar with state, federal law, public records, and conflicts of interest. These are troublesome areas. Dan Palmieri, we wouldn't be able to work without Dan in the employment and benefits law. Human resources is a very, very complex part of municipal law. Oh, I jumped over Grady, environmental law. We haven't had a big environmental law need lately. A few things with EMC, but we will eventually. There'll be something. And Kevin Stanfield, general commercial litigation, eminent domain. We've had to use Kevin's services on North Arundel eminent domain threats, I guess you could call it, just to try and get some movement from the parties. Charles George is insurance and construction law, contracts and litigation. We will have a big construction project here in Zebulon before long, and you're going to need to have an experienced, thoughtful attorney to figure out the contracts and work with staff. Chris Ray is extremely proficient in this area, but legal services are very important. Now, we also need trademark and trade name. That's a very current topic right now. And if we're going to spend all this time and effort to try and come up with the right logos, we need to trademark them and protect them and make sure we get to use them exclusively, right? Key projects, I'm not going to go through these. You can look at your board: asphalt plant, Shepherd School Road, Whitley Gallery, community development types of things. Intergovernmental projects have been very interesting. Mudcats, 5-county stadium, the effort that the municipalities in Wake County have had to get electronic notices, and also just this very interesting alliance of municipalities and the attorneys that serve them have formed a loose and informal alliance. And we've met twice, one time in Cary and the last time most recently here in Zebulon. And that was at no cost to the town, but we sponsored that meeting and provided lunch, and it was an incredible exchange of ideas. To this day, I get no fewer than 3 emails a week from my colleagues in other municipalities. Say, hey, how do you handle this? What are you doing with this type of issue? And I can't tell you how that has helped in terms of promoting understanding and collegiality with our colleagues in Wake County. Budget, spoiled it, 275. It's exactly the same as we did for 224. 224, 275 is the same as we did for fiscal year 223. I think we're over budget in 2023. I think we'll be under budget in the current year. We're over budget in fiscal year 2022. So I'm just staying with the status quo on that.
Any questions, comments for Eric?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. On referendum.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to give a preview of what you're about to see, we are pushing a lot of information to you, and we are doing that in an effort to give you the option, if you want to place a bond referendum on the ballot for this November, you've got that option. But as you'll see in this presentation, as well as in the subsequent presentations, you don't necessarily have to do that. But we want to push this information to you so you at least have the option. So one of the things that we'll be talking about tonight is we'll start to give you some information that's related to affordability. We'll get some information from you that will help us give you some priorities to consider. We'll use all of that to determine what could be the amount of a bond referendum that you put out there, the type of the bond referendum, so examples being for roadways or facilities or fire or parks, and the timing. Do you go forward with a bond referendum this November? Do you go forward with a bond referendum next November? Do you go forward with one bond referendum this November and maybe a second or third the following November? So again, we want to give you some information and we want to gain some feedback from you so we can put you in a position to determine the bond amount and the type and the timing. And with that, I'll recognize Finance Director Bobby Fitz.
All right, thanks, Joe. as you're aware, this wouldn't be the first time you've seen some of this info. Just kind of a review and kind of, like we said, a kind of timeline of things, next steps in the next couple of months, actually. You'll remember we kind of had a go or no-go time here in the next 30 to 45 days. We need to do a determination of what we might want to do, the purpose, and then the amounts that we're interested in doing on the November referendum. May 1st, if we decide to do something for this year, is when we need to start the process of doing the resolution with the board authorizing the application that will go to the LGC. And if so, that would be a May 7th publication, published notice of intent with the LGC to kind of start that process. So tonight you'll hear a little bit about affordability analysis that was done, and then after this that we'll have a little project prioritization exercise that you'll be doing in reference to what Joe mentioned before the break with all the projects. As you're aware, you've seen this before, there's many needs on the board. Transportation, about $15 million in projects. Fire facility projects totaling about $18 million. Parks projects of about $15 million. And then other facility projects such as Public Works, 5 County Stadium, and Town Hall expansion totaling about $15 million. As far as we did a couple of approaches as far as timing. As Joe mentioned, would you want to do something this November or wait till the next November? Ted Cole was here from Davenport and Company. They kind of ran some analysis. You may remember at the January mini retreat, you saw some of these numbers. I think we mentioned like 12 cents as for a $20 million bond is what it would cost on a tax rate equivalent. With some updated assessed value numbers, that's looking more like maybe this year will be like a 10.7 cent tax increase. Then what they did is ran some analysis to see if we waited till November of 24, for instance, and then do a spring of 25 issue the debt. One thing with that, we'll have a January 1, 2024 is the next revaluation. That would be a FY25 revenue essentially. So if we waited till November of 24, we would know assessed value numbers, revaluation numbers. They ran some different models with some growth scenarios, some revaluation scenarios. We ran anywhere from 1% growth to 18% growth because some conservative numbers on the 1%, 18% are some more actual numbers that we've had. From 22 to 23, we saw 18% tax-based growth. And then as far as the revaluation, we had a 28% increase in the 2020 revaluation. So that's kind of the rationale behind doing all those different revaluation growth scenarios. And what that 10.7 cents, if we were to wait, that 20 million we were to do now, it could increase the value of the issuance for the same tax rate equivalent, anywhere from 21.7 million up to 28.8 with like best case scenario type things, as I mentioned, with those exorbitant growth rates. That's really it as far as that goes. If anybody has any questions, we'll try to answer them. As I said, Ted's here. Questions concerning that little bit there before we go into the project prioritization exercise.
When you did the 5 County Stadium, what tier did you use?
Yeah, that assumes, here, let's go back. For the facility at 15 million, that looks like that's just the first phase.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments?
Okay, so we are going to take you through an exercise, and what we're looking for is we're trying to get an interest of what you think is the highest need of project. And we'll ask you to rank those, and Michael Clark will come up here and take you through the exercise similar to what you did with the Main Street program. Then we're going to take you through another exercise, which is not only prioritization, but urgency. So some projects might have an equal need, but they might not be urgent. One might be more urgent than the other. So we're gonna walk you through a review of the projects that we're going to ask you to rank. Not saying that that's a full list, but it's going to give us an idea of what type of project or what projects are of greatest importance to you. So first, this is the northern part of your North Arundel project. Right there in the center is the intersection of Green Pace and Arundel. You've got a project that has just been bid on that. You'll have that project bid come before you at your April regular meeting. A lot of the widening that's associated around that intersection will be taken care of with that project. But as you go further to the right part of the screen, that starts to get into what we have typically been calling the North Arundel project. That is the major widening of North Arundel itself from the intersection with Dogwood through Pierce's and all the way to the development that you're seeing with Popeyes and Highway 55 Burger, as well as up Pierce's past Sheets. So when we offer you an option to talk about projects, you'll see this as the North Arundel project. You'll also see in there the extension of Jones Street and the Proctor-Pierce intersection. So what this is this is the continued widening of Pierce's Road from where the North Arundel project stops, all the way up to the roundabout there with with Proctor. The widening of Proctor, a little bit past to where the Jones Street extension would come out, past these houses, connecting to the existing Jones Street, and then completing this portion down here. The most pressing need as far as finances will be the Shepherd School Road and Old Bun Road signal project and intersection widening. We are underway with property acquisitions on that project. To underline the point that you could move forward this year, but you don't have to, even though this is the most pressing project needing finances. I think based upon development contributions through fee in lieu, as well as your traffic impact fees and your fund balance, you could fund this project next fiscal year and not require to go to a bond referendum. So just wanted to make you aware that you have options to move forward on transportation projects, this being your most urgent, without having to issue a bond referendum. Your fire station number 1 that you've had a presentation on, the fire station 2 that will be coming in within a 5-year period of time. Again, we are still winnowing down where the location would be. And then the Little River Park projects that you've heard discussed. So this is phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. And then you'll also see in the quiz, you'll see something called new parks. And what that refers to is your master plan. You'll see these circles here. Those are the types of projects that we're talking about. So you've got this project down here, that's Little River Park. You got a project down here around 5 County Stadium. These are the new park projects that we're trying to get some feedback from you on need and urgency. You have existing parks that you have the option to expand. So when you take a look at Community Park right down here, it shows the full clover leaf of baseball fields as was originally intended to be. as well as the extension down the sewer easement and then connecting to what would be what has been called the catwalk or the Green Spine Greenway to 5 County Stadium. And then there's we're giving you a couple of examples of greenways, so we'll ask you to get a sense of importance and urgency on greenways, but we're giving you some examples so you kind of have an understanding of what could be some candidate projects. So this is the Green Spine Greenway connecting Little River Park, coming up, going through downtown, and then continuing to 5 County Stadium. Another example is you've already completed phase 1 of your Beaver Dam Creek Greenway. So this would continue with the extension off the end of Tarrant Lakes and continuing down Beaver Dam Creek. Beaver Dam Creek is one of your greenways in your Greenway Master Plan. So you don't necessarily have to do this one. I know that I've been approached, and some of you have been approached by the librarian at the public library wanting to know about the greenway that connects the library with the Boys and Girls Club. That is an example of another greenway that's in your Greenway Master Plan. And then here are the different levels for the 5 County Stadium improvements. The first level is just strictly to meet the requirements of Major League Baseball player development license requirements. Level 2 is both meets those demands, but then sets the stage to do enhanced improvements in the future fan base experiences. So if you look at the lower right to the screen, you'll see the development on the right field side of the stadium that allows for a multi-story clubhouse and then future multi-purpose space to build on to things like, in this case, a rooftop event deck. And then on the left field side to introduce some playground and make some improvements to the stadium main concourse. And then the fifth level is to put in the Sky Lounge and the suite renovations that are already there. So you'll see this put before you as 5 County Stadium PDL, 5 County Stadium PDL Plus, and the PDL Plus is this level 2. And then 5 County Stadium fan base experience, and that's anything from level 4 through 5. The building that we're in right now, as well as the adjacent complex, the police department, it is aging. While it feels brand new, it needs some upfit. We have dated amenities, particularly in the restrooms, and the building itself needs some retrofit. We are also running out of space within this existing building, so we'll put before you the idea of town hall renovation. You'll see that. In addition to that, the idea of expanding this and having an expansion to this facility. You saw an outline of the opportunity to do that when Chief Perry presented to you Fire Station 1. You just saw an area that was denoted for creation of a new or an additional town hall. So we'll put those as questions before you. You've heard this before at your quarterly report from Public Works. This is the expansion of the Public Works laydown area, as well as expansion of the offices and shed and other areas in there that expand both their layout yard but also their usable space. So with that, I'm going to bring Michael Clark up here. He's going to ask you to brush off your QR code skills, and we're going to take you through a couple of exercises. First, we're looking for overall priorities. So we've got like 15 projects in front of you, and we're going to ask you to, it's most important if we can get your top 5 to 10, and we can get to know what ones that you're least interested in. So there's going to be some in the middle that you're going to not necessarily know where to put, and that's going to be less important. What we want to know is what are the most important and what are the least important. And then Michael will then take you through a second exercise, which is to get at a particular project might have equal need, but they have different urgency. So as an example, I talked with you about the intersection of Old Bun and Shepherd School, high need, high urgency. Another project might have a high need, but it has less of an urgency. So let me pause to see if there's any questions before I turn it over to Michael. All right, Michael, take it away.
Okay, let's run through this. Cell phones, if you can scan that QR code should be active. The first of the exercises has all these different possible funding or projects available. You click on that and you hold your thumb down and you'll have two arrows and you can move them up and down and you want to list them in priority. And what you'll see on the screen after you're done, go to the bottom of your screen and hit submit, and then this will calculate the priorities based on the total number of votes. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. You do have to log in your name. Let me know if you have any questions.
Do we have to enter our name?
You can't, you don't have to, you can hit spots. You want to enter your name?
Come on, put your name in.
There you go.
If you have any problems logging in, please let me know.
Now,
So then you just click, and it says that, it says you can click and move it up, and that's not working for us.
it's not working. Let's see. So if I move it up and down.
So you should be able to, so click on,
Tab to the hits you want to move. And so enter your response.
just tap,
See, whether I want it to go up and down.
so once you just tap on it one time, it'll let you move it up or down, or whichever you want to do it. So if you want to move that one, so the stop count is
Move it way down.
Okay, up or down priority.
Okay.
Having a good time here.
You got it?
I got it. Now I'm gonna hit that one. Okay, I'll try. Yeah, I'm doing it. Hey, I got it under control here. God, this is gonna take me forever to get all the way down there. I mean, I do. I just don't know which ones I want.
Yeah.
This is too. I'm not sure. It's,
No,
I'm
bounced off.
not done.
Did you cancel us on? We gotta start over? No way.
I tell you what, if I do, you're just gonna have to let me write mine on paper, because I'm tired of mashing that button.
No way, Mike, no way.
I
We
was
do have to
almost
start
finished.
over, though.
excited.
It's gonna hit submit real quick before they have us. Hey, yeah. No, this is new. Is this different?
I feel like we should have music from Jeopardy or something.
Mine's all
Jeopardy.
different now.
Yeah, it's
This is
different.
kind of a clunky way to do this,
I don't like it.
and I feel like it's taking unnecessary time, especially since we're having to redo this.
This is different. These aren't the same things that was on the first page.
This doesn't have what I, oh, yeah, there it
No, it
goes.
didn't capture, it didn't keep what you originally put in.
Keeps
You have to put it
resetting.
back in.
Yeah, it was something different.
So technology rocks.
This together. That was there. This is not. You have removed too many around.
And then when you've completed, be sure to hit submit at the bottom of the screen.
I'm just working on number one, so.
No,
I mean,
hey,
I
you-
feel like
you
it's gonna
wow.
take us 35 minutes to finish, maybe.
These all need to go down all the way to the bottom. All we have to do is 5 of them? And I can do enter? What do I do?
I'm just working on my top 5, right,
That's what I
guys?
did.
Because like, this is already
So I
very
do, I
aggravating.
got my top 5, I don't know if they're,
There you go, you did it. It moves, soon as you hit submit.
exactly like mine.
I'm still working on number 1. Is that what we're doing right now?
Can you track the number of responses so we know when all 6 have submitted?
If you touch that and it resets everything,
Yeah, I don't want to
Mine did that
No,
like 4 times.
I'll wait till,
I'm out. Just when you finish, put your hands up. What no, you good.
waiting on 2. Or maybe 3.
I thought I was done.
I should need that chip. Something changed. Mine are still right, though. Fire station one's moved up. Oh, it's backwards now.
Only 1 left.
Traffic, the fire station, a park, and a green.
Okay, everybody voted?
Did you submit?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I did.
So this showed the top 5 priorities were the North Arundel Access Management, Proctor's and Pierce's Roundabout, Fire Station Number 1, Little River Park Phase 1, and Greenway. Okay, the next exercise is much quicker.
Gotta be.
North Arundel Access Management Program. This one specifically,
It goes up there.
Oh, okay.
we got 2 more votes to go. Okay, 1 more. Okay, everybody's voted on that one? Next question.
Next.
That's mine up there.
Somebody already voted? Proctor
Yeah,
and
clear.
Pierce's Roundabout. Now everybody's getting the hang of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we need one more.
But I'm supposed to clear it afterwards then.
You don't have to. You can
That's why it just came back up again.
Did everybody vote?
Did I vote?
just.
Yes,
You did.
Okay,
because it goes up as soon as you touch it.
we have 5 dots and 6. Did everybody
Somebody didn't vote.
touch the screen?
I did vote. even
She
though
did,
I
Libra
did.
Okay.
All ayes.
Everybody picked urgent and important. Moving on to the next one, Jones Street Extension. Once again, upper left, urgent and important. Upper right, important but not urgent. Lower left, not important
This
but
is
urgent.
Pierce's Roundabout.
And lower right, not urgent, not important.
Okay, Jones Street. I guess it went.
It is.
Okay, that's everybody. So 2 indicated not urgent but important, and the rest urgent and important. Fire Station 1, looks like there's 2 dots right on top of each other. Five and 6. Okay, everybody indicated urgent and important. Fire Station number 2. Okay. 5 indicated important, but not urgent. 1 indicated not urgent, not important. Little River Park Phase 1. Okay, everybody said that was important. 5 of you said urgent, 1 said not urgent. Little River Park Phase 2. Okay, that was quick 6 dots. Everybody indicated important but not urgent. Oops. Little River Park Phase 3. Okay, that's all 6 dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. Okay, everybody said not urgent. 1 person said not important. The rest said important. New parks, these are those dots that were shown throughout the map based on the comprehensive Parks and Recreation Plan. Okay, it's kind of split with that one between urgent and not important, and important and not urgent. Community Park, this is the expansion of the full Cloverleaf. Okay, the majority said important but not urgent. 1 said important and urgent, and 1 indicated not important, not urgent. Greenway expansion. This is the Greenway from Little River Park to 5 County Stadium.
Could be any greenway.
Sorry?
This could be just greenways in general. We gave them several examples.
Everybody indicated important but not urgent. Five County Stadium, this is that level 1 basic player development league requirements. Still waiting on one dot. Okay, looks like everybody's done. Everybody put urgent and important. Five-county stadium advanced player league, or this is the level 2 improvements. Okay, one person indicated important and urgent. The rest said not important and not urgent. Okay, this is for five-county stadium. This is the player development leagues plus the additional fan experience upgrades. All right, everybody indicated not urgent. 2 said that it was important, and 4 said not important. All right, town hall renovation. All right, everybody said not urgent. Half said important, half said not important. Town hall campus expansion. Okay, 2 indicated important, not urgent, while the remainder said not important, not urgent. And public works expansion. Okay, this one was all over the place. 2 indicated important and urgent. Chris Ray says thank you. 2 said important but not urgent, and 2 indicated not important and not urgent. And that completes the exercise.
Thank you very
Now that we
much.
got the hang of this.
I know, I could do it, I can do.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Recognize Sheila Long.
Good evening again. So at our February regular meeting, we brought forward some amendments to the special events policy based on discussion and direction from the board at your January work session. And just as a review, the board provided guidance. We started on this August of last year, and we received guidance from the board with the draft document that was presented. We presented a follow-up draft to the board at your October regular meeting. You adopted it at your November work session with the intent to revisit it at your January work session. And based on that, we, as I mentioned before, we did bring forward the directed amendments. And so that was what you were presented in February, and you asked to table those items. And just to review the items that were tabled, we provided guidance and limitations. That's on page 8 for parades. We did acknowledge that additional study of parades was going to be needed, but at a minimum, we felt that this guidance was important to continue hosting parades in our community. They were consistent with expectations of parades that have occurred in our community, as well as some changes that had been made based off of the occurrence of Raleigh's circumstance last year. We also brought forward to expand consumption and distribution of alcohol to include liquor as in stated on page 11. I'm available to answer any questions about those two items. The staff recommendation was to adopt amendments to the special event standards subject to any final edit and corrections included by board motion. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Motorcycle, 15 cars, you only limit it to 15.
But that's just saying that it's 15, there needs to be like another float or whatever, and then another parade.
Yeah,
As long as you don't limit, like I said, I didn't want to limit the amount of entries that each organization could have.
I see what you're saying.
That's my key thing.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Does the board want to seek a motion on this?
It's kind of like you have the mixture of two. You have policy and standards mixed together in there. So in the future reference, I don't know how we can do that, where we can make sure we have policy. So standards are there to support the policy. We're mixing the two here together. I think sometimes for the citizens that I work with, as well as myself, that's the kind of level where I'm trying to figure out what we can do in the future references. You did a great job writing. I'm not saying that at all. I just wanted to figure out what we can do as a board to make sure that we understand the concept of policy versus standards. If you look at some of the things in there, it can be kind of like they're piggybacking off each other, where we're saying the same thing, where it would have been a policy as well as part of a policy instead of a standard. It's just a mixture of the two here when we really read through it.
Can you give me an example of what is more of a standard and what is more of a policy?
Well, when you look at the whole, you would have to go through that. I could go through there, it's the entire thing, but I would say kind of like when you look at a policy gives you guidelines, like, okay, it sets the foundation for what's going to be. The standards are just that foundation. It gives that kind of like that's, I guess, for that starting point. The standards set what's going to come before you, what you expect, the guidelines, basically. So right here, what we have a mixture of two. If you all read it through it, I mean, you would see kind of like each and every aspect of it. When we go through the back of, hold on, let me give you an example.
You mean like how it says the reservation?
They're going to have to go and find out who that personnel is that's going to say yes or no. And it leaves somewhat, I guess, somewhat to subjective. We know currently the people that we have in place now are green lighting. Pretty much we're looking for that aspect of the partnerships with the citizens. But in the future, I look long-term. I'm saying...
Clarification, one question, and may I ask that?
Go ahead.
Okay. If we just look on page 1, Sheila, it does say under role of the Special Events Committee, it refers to the special event policy. Is that different than the special event standards? Is there a different special events policy then?
The word is interchangeable in this setting, so I mean, that's grammatical. We could make that adjustment to where, because we played back and forth in calling it a standard versus a policy. It's just another.
Let me read the...
I think for continuity, it would be best if it all read so that someone's not reading.
6 p.m., 5 County Stadium.
Thank you, Mayor. The town of Zebulon is hosting the next meeting of the East Wake Local Government Association, which for those that are in the audience or watching is the elected boards from Knightdale, Wendell, Rollsville, and Zebulon. And per quarter, each of those towns are rotating as the host. Again, Zebulon is hosting.
Discussion? Questions? Roll vote. Commissioner Baxter?
Approve.
Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark?
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Laux?
In favor.
Motion passes. Next, we will go into closed session to consult with the attorney. We need a motion to go into closed session to allow North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A3 to consult with the attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body, which privileges is hereby acknowledged. General policy matters may not be discussed in a closed session, and nothing herein shall be construed to permit a body to close a meeting that otherwise would be open merely because an attorney, employee, or retained by the public body is a participant. The public body may consider and give instructions to an attorney concerning the handling or settlement or claim, judicial action, mediation, arbitration, or administrative procedures. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
We're also discussing property acquisition as well as the amended agenda.
Yeah, I mean, that was added on with the,
covered under that.
when we approved the agenda. So,
We have a motion. and
Motion with a second. And we already voted, right?
This one. Yeah. Yeah, it's been done.
Commissioner Baxter, did we vote on it?
We didn't vote.
Okay. Any discussion?
No, let's go.
That's-
I approve.
okay.
I'm in favor.
Commissioner Bowers,
Favor.
Commissioner Clark,
In favor?
Commissioner Harrison,
Favor.
Commissioner Laux.
In favor?
Okay. Closed session.